2 to 5 inches of rain is heading east of the Rockies over the next 2 weeks. A Level 3 enhanced risk of severe weather is in place Saturday across Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska. July 4th right now is looking like a wet day in the low 80s, not the typical scorcher. The cold pattern running the eastern half of this country for weeks is still absolutely not done. The next 2 weeks look like some of the most active and stormy weather of the entire year. Let's start with today and the overall pattern that is driving all of this wild and relentless weather. Right now, the jet stream is diving eastward while warmth surges up the west coast of North America. That western warmth is what's forcing cold and active weather to dominate the eastern half of the nation. Multiple pockets of storms are scattered across the country today, and they're moving like cars on a highway. Pacific moisture is feeding consistent storminess across Louisiana and the Gulf states all week. Thunderstorms are also tracking along that northern jet like a storm train rolling across the northeast corner. The deep south is seeing waves of heavy rainfall with Gulf moisture fueling everything from below. Today is not the most active day of the stretch, but it is already busy out there. If you're in the northern jet track area, stay alert. Thunderstorms are riding along that highway right now. Now let's get to Saturday, June 20th. This is where things get really serious for the Central Plains. A low over Colorado fires up thunderstorms from Texas all the way up through the Dakotas on Saturday. Louisiana, Arkansas, and Missouri are also in the crosshairs, along with storms stretching into the southeast. The SPC has issued a Level 3 enhanced risk across Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska. This is serious. A Level 2 slight risk covers a wide stretch of the plains, including Kansas City and Wichita. Every single hazard is on the table Saturday. Damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes are all possible. Saturday afternoon is when the first discrete supercells begin firing across the Central Plains. Those early supercells can produce very large hail with a real tornado threat attached to each one. But here's what makes Saturday night really concerning. Those supercells are going to merge after dark. Instead of weakening after sunset, these storms congeal into a massive and fast-moving storm complex overnight. Meteorologists call that an MCS. And when these giant systems get going, they can be absolutely ferocious. Once those storms merge, the main threat shifts from tornadoes to extremely dangerous straight-line wind gusts. And we're talking damaging wind gusts well above 75 miles per hour from that overnight storm complex Saturday. 75 miles per hour of straight-line wind can tear apart structures and topple trees across a very wide area. If you live in Nebraska, Kansas, or Colorado, Saturday evening through overnight is the window to watch carefully. Drop your city in the comments below. We'll make sure you get updated as that storm develops Saturday. Overnight storm evolution is one of the trickiest scenarios because it catches people off guard in the dark. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive weather alerts before you go to sleep Saturday night. And even Sunday, June 21st, the threat does not disappear. The plains and Midwest stay active. Sunday brings a more significant low-pressure system moving across the Midwest, and it changes the whole picture. A warm front pushing east from that low makes Sunday briefly warmer along the East Coast. The East Coast gets a brief warmer break Sunday before the cold front arrives and changes everything again. There is a slight risk of severe weather for the plains and Midwest on Sunday the 21st. That Sunday slight risk covers the Central Plains, Midwest, and back into parts of the Ohio Valley. No extended SPC outlooks for some upcoming days doesn't mean no severe weather. It just means lower confidence. Further into the day 4 through 8 range, a marginal or slight risk becomes increasingly likely. So don't let the absence of an extended outlook give you a false sense of security this week. Comment your city below and let us know what conditions look like in your area right now. This weekend is one of the most serious severe weather setups we have seen this season. Monday, June 22nd shapes up as hot, windy, and stormy across a big chunk of the eastern states. A warm front pulls hot, humid air north so fast it barely mixes with cooler air above. The faster that warm air moves north, the more intense the heat and the more dangerous the conditions. Think extremely windy, very hot, and stormy, similar to what some areas have already been dealing with. A dragging cold front is pressing through. By Monday, That's what sets off the next round of storms. If you're in the mid-Atlantic or Northeast and it feels weirdly hot on Monday, this is exactly why. That Monday East Coast ridge is hot, windy, and stormy, very similar to recent days. By Tuesday, a cold front has rolled through and we settle into ridge west, trough east once again. Tuesday looks to be a bit of a breather, slightly quieter, although showers are still around in spots. But don't get too comfortable, because by Wednesday, more storms are firing up across a wide area again. Wednesday sees active weather across the plains, Midwest, Deep South, and even along the East Coast once more. California sits under strong high pressure, and that western ridge is actually causing all of this activity. The western ridge forces the jet stream to dive east, pulling Arctic air southward fast. This ridge and trough seesaw has been the defining theme of summer for the eastern states. Now let's talk about the Arctic air, because what's happening here is genuinely unusual for June. By Thursday, June 25th, the ridge west and trough east pattern becomes very, very intense and potent. This is not Canadian air we are dealing with. This is air coming straight from the Arctic Circle. When that air blasts southward fast, it barely has time to mix, meaning it arrives more potent. Think of it like a river. The faster it flows south, the colder it arrives at your doorstep. That's why these Arctic blasts can deliver temperatures so far below normal for June. The speed matters. Gulf heat meeting Arctic cold head-on creates explosive instability along that collision boundary. By June 26th, a lot of that explosive activity focuses on the Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. So if you're watching from the Northeast corridor, pay close attention to what happens Thursday through Friday. Now here's the mechanism behind all of this. It's called the PNA, the Pacific North American Pattern. When the West Coast runs warm, it sets up a chain reaction, locking the East in cold. Think of the West Coast as upstream. What happens out there reaches us in the East very quickly. When cold air finally moves into the West Coast, the East almost instantly flips to a warmer pattern. But the West warms back up fast, and equally fast, the cold shoots into the East again. This back and forth is what's been creating this wild seesaw pattern all summer long across the country. When the West cools, the East warms. And when the West heats back up, the East chills again. That's the PNA in action, one of the most powerful tools for understanding what's coming next. It is stunning how reactive this pattern is. Small changes out west drive huge shifts across the East. Right now, western warmth is firmly in control, meaning the East stays locked in cold and active weather. Now let's zoom forward to Thursday, June 26th, and this is where things get very, very intense. The ridge west and trough east dynamic reaches its peak intensity around June 25th and 26th. Colder than normal Arctic air is blasting into the eastern United States at a very rapid pace. This is not a typical cool snap. This is aggressively cold air blasting in fast for mid-June. Temperatures could run 10 to 20 degrees below normal across parts of the Midwest and the East Coast. And while that's happening in the East, the West Coast is baking under persistent and brutal heat. California temperatures are pushing well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a dangerous and prolonged heat situation. These two extremes happening at the same time are a perfect example of this pattern distorting weather nationwide. Hot, humid Gulf air and cold Arctic air from the north are squeezing directly into each other. That squeeze creates explosive instability and a lot of severe weather potential along that collision zone. By June 27th, there's a double trough pattern, and that somewhat reduces the intensity of each individual trough. More troughs spread across the hemisphere means each one is a little less potent, but still very active. The plains and Midwest are looking at more severe weather possibilities around Saturday, June 27th. Snowfall near the Rockies is even possible at the end of June as this cold air surges south. Around Sunday, June 28th, we may finally see a pattern change, a real shift in the whole setup. The trough could begin moving from east to west, allowing warmer air to finally build into the east. Both the European and GFS models semi-agree on this, which raises confidence that the shift is coming. A very strong low develops over the north-central states around June 29th, and it is significant. This low intensifies dramatically, and given how potent it looks on the models, it warrants very close watching. Warm front activity from that low produces steady, dreary rainfall across a wide area in the east. Cold front action below the low is where thunderstorm activity and severe weather potential really develops. Now here's the one that's really going to catch your attention. Let's talk about July 4th. Models show a trough east, ridge west pattern right on the 4th of July. Unexpected timing. Normally the 4th of July ranks as one of the hottest days of the year in the east. But this year, July 4th looks like a wet, stormy day with temperatures in the low 80s. Low 80s and rainy on July 4th. Very unusual and not what most folks expect at all. If you're planning a cookout or fireworks this July 4th, keep a very close eye on the forecast. By July 4th and 5th, both models show a possible return to the original trough in east pattern. Historically, the first week of July is the most active, stormy period of the year for the east. We are literally moving into peak storm season for the eastern half of the United States right now. Here's the big picture on rainfall, and the European model is showing some really impressive totals. Almost everyone east of the Rockies is sitting in the red on the precipitation map right now. The red zone on that model means 2 to 5 inches of rainfall over the coming 2-week period. When you stretch that out monthly, some areas are looking at 4 to 10 inches of total rainfall. That puts nearly everybody in above average precipitation territory for this time of year. Genuinely good news. Out west, it is very dry, and that persistent ridge is making wildfire conditions worse out there. The bottom line on rainfall, the eastern 2/3 of the country is about to get plenty of it. Now let's address the other major story, the Gulf Coast flooding from Arthur's remnants. Arthur may have lost its tropical storm status, but its remnants are still generating catastrophic flooding. A massive amount of moisture is locked along the Gulf Coast and pounding those communities hard. Catastrophic flash flooding is an active threat right now, from Louisiana through parts of coastal Texas and Alabama. Urban drainage systems in low-lying coastal cities simply cannot handle the volume of water being thrown at them. Streets are turning into rivers. Neighborhoods are being cut off. And that situation is going to continue. If you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast right now, please check local conditions before going anywhere. 6 inches of moving water knocks you off your feet. 2 feet carries away your entire vehicle. Turn around, don't drown. That rule has never been more important than it is in the Gulf states. Drop your city in the comments if you're in the Gulf Coast area. We want to know. Now let's talk about the heat building under this pattern. It plays a key role in everything. The upper Midwest and East Coast are seeing temperatures running 10 to 20 degrees above normal right now. That heat isn't just discomfort. It's fueling the explosive instability when the Arctic air crashes in. When air masses this far apart in temperature collide, the severe weather potential goes through the roof. West Coast temperatures are well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that heat ridge is not going anywhere. Overnight temps are not dropping enough, and that is putting real stress on power grids across the region. People are running air conditioning around the clock, and demand is pushing some grids toward their limits. If you're in a hot area, please check on your elderly neighbors. Heat is a serious threat. And while all of this is happening over the continent, we need to look at the Atlantic tropics. There's disturbed weather moving off the coast of Africa that forecasters are watching closely right now. These systems form over the Sahara Desert as African easterly waves before moving out to sea. Once they move over the warm Atlantic, they start pulling in moisture and heat energy from the ocean. Atlantic sea surface temperatures right now are running well above 82 degrees Fahrenheit in many areas. That warm ocean water is essentially a massive fuel tank ready to supercharge any system that organizes. The only obstacle right now is dry Saharan dust being pushed westward across the Atlantic. If that dust layer weakens, this disturbance has all it needs to develop into a named tropical system. We are watching this closely, especially with Atlantic water temperatures this warm and favorable for development. Now let's get specific, because I know many of you are watching and wondering about your own area. Kansas City, you're in the level 2 slight risk Saturday with damaging winds and hail heading into evening. Wichita and Salina. Kansas, you're inside the level 3 enhanced zone Saturday, so take this very seriously. Denver and eastern Colorado, Saturday's enhanced risk covers your area with supercells, large hail, and tornado potential. Omaha and Lincoln. Nebraska, slight risk Saturday, but watch for that overnight storm complex tracking your way. Chicago and Indianapolis Sunday is the day that could be more significant than the current forecast even suggests. St. Louis viewers, you are right in the middle of the Sunday slight risk with all hazards. Memphis, Nashville, and Louisville. Storm activity tracks through your area Saturday night into Sunday morning. Atlanta and Birmingham, the flooding risk from Arthur's Remnants is ongoing, and additional rain is still possible. Houston and New Orleans Gulf flooding is not improving today, so stay on top of local alerts. Washington, D.C. and Baltimore brace for a very hot and stormy Monday as that warm front pushes through. New York and Boston storm activity comes your way on Sunday through the northern jet track. If your city isn't on this list, drop it in comments and we'll cover it next update. Let's wrap this up because this 2-week stretch is genuinely one for the record books. Multiple huge cold fronts are going to roll through the country one after another over the coming weeks. Real Arctic air straight from the Arctic Circle itself will keep pushing into the eastern states. The eastern half of the nation is heading into above-average precipitation, below-average temps, and persistent storm activity. Meanwhile, the west is going to stay hot, dry, and locked under that stubborn ridge of high pressure. I honestly cannot believe how long this colder-than-normal pattern has lasted. Wild stuff for June. We are moving into peak storm season for the eastern United States. The atmosphere knows it too. This is not a pattern that breaks quickly. Models show it lingering well into late June. Drop your city in the comments right now. Where are you watching from across the country today? We check comments regularly to give you the most timely and relevant forecast for your specific area. Have you noticed the weather feeling different this summer? Let us know in the comments down below. Stay weather aware, stay safe, and we will keep tracking all of these major developments as they evolve.